Down Millsap. Down. Pass. No! Oh, wow!
In the hands of Anthony. Anthony for three. Puts it in! Knicks by one with 8.2 remaining.
Into Carmelo. 3 seconds. Carmelo launches.
He's one of the greatest scorers in basketball history. A genuine throwback whose jab-stepping, ISO-heavy arsenal set him apart in the age of efficiency, for better or worse. A living legend whose trademark celebration is imitated but never duplicated on courts around the world by his fans and detractors alike. This is the story behind Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony was born May 29, 1984 to Mary Anthony and Carmelo Iriarte. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Anthony lost his father to liver cancer at only 2 years old, and the family moved to Baltimore later in his childhood. On the tough streets of West Baltimore, young Carmelo had two paths to choose from. As childhood friend Tyler Smith told Rocky Mountain News in 2006, everything was around sports because we didn't want to get into the street life. That's the alternative. You only got two things, street life or sports. Anthony and his friends would find a way to ball by any means necessary, even if it meant sometimes using a crate and utility pole as a basket and stanchion. To make a few bucks, a preteen Melo and his friends would squeegee cars and resell drinks outside Orioles games. As he grew into a young man, Anthony began to excel on the court, whether playing for his school or his AAU team. A 5-inch growth spurt that made him a 6'5" 15-year-old didn't hurt either. Through 3 years at Towson Catholic High School, Anthony established himself as the best player in the city, earning multiple Player of the Year awards for the Baltimore area. During the summer of 2001, between his junior and senior seasons, Anthony dominated an Adidas AAU tournament in Las Vegas, averaging more than 25 points per game to lead his Baltimore select team to the semifinals. Later that summer, he and a 16-year-old named LeBron James shared the scoring title at the USA Basketball Youth Development Festival. By the time his senior high school season tipped off at Virginia's famed Oak Hill Academy following a transfer from Towson, Anthony's stock and confidence were soaring. Anthony averaged 21.7 points, 8.1 rebounds, and 4 assists at Oak Hill in 2001-2002, leading the school to a 32-1 record and a top 3 ranking nationwide that landed Melo atop most rankings of American high school seniors. Most notably during that senior year, Anthony's Oak Hill side edged James's St. Vincent St. Mary squad in front of 11,000 people in New Jersey, in a game that saw the future NBA superstars combine for 70 points and 19 rebounds. Suffice to say, Anthony arrived at Syracuse already a household name to true hoopheads. What he did in his brief time in Orange made him a young legend. Melo averaged 22 points and 10 rebounds in his only collegiate season to lead Syracuse to the program's first and only NCAA championship. In addition to being named a second-team All-American as a freshman, Anthony also took home Most Outstanding Player award at the NCAA tournament.
The outside to steal it.
Anthony with a new career-high 31.
Boy, you've got to love the way this young man plays.
Timeout, Texas.
The next stop was the NBA, where Anthony would join names like James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh in one of the most hyped draft classes of all time. With the Ohio-born James obviously headed to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who owned the #1 pick in the 2003 draft, Anthony was seen as the perfect fit for Detroit, who had the 2nd overall pick. The Pistons were a perennial Eastern Conference contender still rising en route to becoming a championship team. Nabbing a talent like Melo in the middle of that run would have been seismic. Instead, though, the Pistons opted for Serbian big man Darko Milicic, leaving Anthony to fall to the Nuggets at number 3. In Denver, he inherited the keys to a franchise in the midst of an 8-year playoff drought that saw the Nuggets average 26 wins per 82 games. With Anthony in the Mile High City, however, things immediately began to change for the better.
Giving it up to Andre Miller. Alley. Ties his career at 30 points.
His rookie season was one for the ages, as Carmelo became the first player since Tim Duncan 6 years earlier, and only the 27th ever at the time, to amass 1,700 points as an NBA freshman. Perhaps more impressive, a 19-year-old Anthony was the leading scorer and highest minute player on a Nuggets team that engineered what was at the time tied for the 6th best turnaround in NBA history, as Denver catapulted from 17 wins in 2002-2003 to 43 wins in 2003-2004. Anthony finished second to James in Rookie of the Year voting, but his team won 8 more games than Cleveland did and made the postseason while LeBron's 35-win Cavs watched the playoffs on TV. With George Karl taking over coaching duties the following season, Denver's upward trajectory continued, at least in the regular season. With Anthony once again averaging 20-plus points, the Nuggets won 49 games in 2004-2005, though Denver fell short in the first round of the playoffs for the second consecutive year, this time in 5 games to the eventual champion Spurs. No one doubted the potential of Carmelo's Nuggets. Anthony found another gear in year 3, when he averaged 26.5 points per game to lead Denver to its first division title in 18 years. Along the way, Melo hit what seemed like an impossible number of clutch shots.
I guess so. 4 seconds. Down to 3. Carmelo Anthony goes for the win and hits a jumper with 1 second left to play.
Boykin's looking for Melo. Carmelo's got it. Carmelo pull-up shoots. He scores! With 2.9 seconds remaining.
Gets it to Carmelo. Pounded by Trenton Hassel. Over Hassel and in.
This is Granger. 4 seconds. Rises from deep and hits. Right in the face of Granger with 2 seconds left.
Carmelo off the dribble. Yes! With 3.8 to go. The Lakers hold for time.
Given his heroics in lifting the Nuggets from the depths of despair to rising contender over his first few years as a pro, and the new 5-year, $80 million extension he signed in the summer of 2006, Denver understandably believed it had found its savior. But as is often the case, postseason disappointments, and in this case off-court incidents, began to chip away at Anthony's reputation as a winner and franchise leader. For the 3rd straight year, Denver was a quick 5-game out in the first round of the 2006 playoffs. Off the court, Anthony dealt with a 2004 charge for marijuana possession at Denver International Airport that was later dropped, and a 2008 arrest for suspicion of DUI that led to a guilty plea for driving while ability impaired. Also in 2004, Anthony appeared in an infamous Baltimore DVD titled Stop Snitching, in which men, some of whom were later arrested for various charges, threatened those watching about cooperating with police. Still, the incident that damaged Melo's reputation the most in those early years actually happened on the court, when a 2006 skirmish between his Nuggets and the Knicks at Madison Square Garden led to the infamous punch and run, or fight and flight, on Marty Collins.
Another punch is thrown. Anthony, and now Jeffrey's going at it. This is turning into some kind of disaster right now. If they don't hold on to some of these players, Jeffries needs to hold back. Marty Collins still going at Anthony. The Usher's trying to keep the crowd out, too. There's just also disgraceful for Carmelo Anthony to throw a punch like that as well and then go backing up.
That punch led to a 15-game suspension for Anthony, the first real absence of his pro career. With the Nuggets looking mediocre and the team's stars sidelined, Denver pulled the trigger on a blockbuster, trading for Allen Iverson in a deal that gave Denver 2 of the game's top scorers. Though Anthony averaged a career-high 28.9 points to make his first All-Star appearance later that season, and while the combination of Melo and AI was something to behold from a sheer offensive production perspective, the Nuggets predictably lacked when it came to efficiency and defense. Denver won 45 games, Anthony and Iverson combined for nearly 50 points per game during a first-round playoff series against San Antonio, and the Nuggets once again got sent packing in 5 games. The 2007-2008 season brought more regular season success, but Anthony and the Nuggets would once again be left disappointed. Melo averaged more than 25 points per game for the 3rd consecutive season, and Denver reached 50 wins for the first time in 20 years. But the team was also competing in what might have been the toughest conference ever. Their 50-32 record got them the 8th seed and a first-round sweep at the hands of the eventual West champion Lakers. Through 5 years in the NBA, Anthony had made multiple All-Star teams, had scored more points than anyone besides Kobe Bryant, James, Iverson, and Dirk Nowitzki, and had led his team to the playoffs 5 straight times. However, his teams had also yet to win more than a single game in a playoff series. But the breakthrough was coming, thanks to another Iverson trade. This time, AI was headed to Detroit, with 2004 champion and clutch leader Chauncey Billups headed to Denver. Mr. Big Shot immediately helped stabilize Anthony's Nuggets, and with those two leading the way, Nene, Kenyon Martin, and the Birdman fortifying the interior, and J.R. Smith providing a scoring punch off the bench, Denver finally looked like a bona fide contender. The Nuggets won 54 games to claim the Western Conference's second seed, with the only real stumbling block coming when the team suspended Anthony 1 game in March after he refused to come out of a game when Carl told him to. That magical Nuggets season also saw Anthony tie the then record for points in a quarter during a December win over Minnesota.
He's going to take the last shot, 5 on the clock. Carmelo drive down the lane, here he comes. That will cap it off. A crazy quarter for the Denver Nuggets, and a historic one for Carmelo Anthony. 33 points in the quarter, that's a new franchise record.
Anthony and the Nuggets then finally got the playoff monkey off their backs by beating Chris Paul-led New Orleans in the first round and Dirk-led Dallas in the West semis, a series that included more Melo heroics.
Carmelo defended by Antoine Wright. And there's the foul. They didn't call it, and Carmelo hits it! Carmelo hits it! He hit a 3!
The Nuggets fell in 6 hard-fought games to the eventual champion Lakers in the 2009 West Finals, but Anthony's team walked off the court that spring with their heads held high for a change. From an individual perspective, questions about whether Melo could be the centerpiece of a winner were temporarily silenced, even if Billups was seen as the emotional leader of that Nuggets squad. But it wasn't long before those questions resurfaced, as Anthony would never again experience such playoff success. He averaged 28.2 points and recorded the first 50-point game of his career during Denver's 53-win season in 2009-2010, only for his 4th-seeded Nuggets to be eliminated by Utah in the first round of the playoffs. Through 7 full seasons in Denver, Anthony had averaged roughly 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists for a Western Conference playoff mainstay. But entering his contract year of 2010-11, he had also only advanced past the first round of the playoffs once. With his sights set on 2011 free agency and a New York homecoming, the All-NBA forward requested a trade. Anthony ultimately spent the first 50 games of the season stuck in Denver, as new Nuggets general manager Masai Ujiri held firm on waiting for the best possible offer in exchange for his disgruntled star. Rather than simply waiting to sign with an up-and-coming Knicks team as a free agent in the summer, Melo continued to push his way to the Knicks via trade. With New York worried another potential Anthony suitor could strike, Melo and the Nuggets eventually got what they wanted. New York sent Danilo Gallinari, Raymond Felton, Wilson Chandler, Timofey Mozgov, and 4 draft picks, one of which eventually yielded Jamal Murray, to Denver as part of a 3-team trade with the Timberwolves that landed Anthony in the city of his birth.
At forward, at 6'8" from Syracuse, number 7, Carmelo.
The deal, which forced the Knicks to give up a chunk of their promising young core and a bunch of future assets, ensured Anthony could further maximize his value in free agency. It's also part of the reason New York was rarely able to build competitive teams around him. Injuries to Amari Stoudemire and Billups, who had been traded to New York along with Anthony, hampered the Knicks in the 2011 playoffs, where they were swept by the Celtics despite a 42-point, 17-rebound, 6-assist, 2-block performance from Anthony in Game 2. The following season, Anthony's first full campaign as a Knick, didn't go nearly as planned. Injuries and inconsistent plays had the Knicks scuffling through the first half of the season, which cost head coach Mike D'Antoni his job. It was during that 2011-12 season that Jeremy Lin took the Garden by storm, as Lin's sanity reigned while Melo was sidelined. With D'Antoni's free-flowing attack replaced by Mike Woodson's more methodical approach, and with Anthony back in the lineup, the Knicks rebounded. But Melo and Jeremy Lin never seemed to mesh, something many attributed to being a Melo-centric issue. In any event, the Knicks were still very much Melo's team.
Smith has it. Knicks down 3. Should the Bulls foul? No. Anthony for 3. Bang! That one goes down, and the game is tied. In the hands of Anthony. Anthony for 3. Puts it in! Knicks by 1
As New York learned though, being Melo's team meant coming up short in the spring, as another injury-riddled Knicks team got bounced in the first round in 2012, this time to the eventual champion Heat in 5 games. The 2012-13 season would prove to be the pinnacle of Anthony's Knicks tenure, and perhaps of his NBA career. Anthony won the scoring title, averaging 28.7 points for the best Knicks team since the 90s. New York won 54 games and went 47-20 with Melo in the lineup, leading to a single first-place MVP vote that prevented LeBron from becoming the first unanimous MVP in league history. The second-seeded Knicks earned their first Atlantic Division title in 19 years, then knocked off the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs for New York's first postseason series win in 13 years. Anthony scored more than twice as many points as any of his teammates during that 2013 playoff run. But that one-man show and a mediocre supporting cast wasn't a recipe for sustained success, and New York fell to Indiana in the East semis. Melo might have been even better the following season, but the Knicks certainly weren't. The All-Star fixture averaged 27.4 points on 45-40-85 shooting to go along with a career-high 8.1 rebounds while leading the league in minutes. But he did all that in vain for a team whose big offseason acquisition was Andrea Bargnani. Though the Knicks won the minutes Anthony was on the court, they were 9 points per 100 possessions worse when he was on the bench and regressed back to 37 wins, missing the playoffs for the first time in 4 years. The highlight of that lost season for the Knicks, and the most emblematic performance of Anthony's admirable year for an otherwise hopeless team, was his career-high MSG record night against Charlotte in January.
Anthony bleeds in. That shot is good! Carmelo Anthony with the greatest scoring game in Knicks history. He's got 62.
They're going to bring him out now so he can feel the crowd, the love of the crowd for Melo.
The highest scoring game ever here at the Garden.
Unable to bear the thought of losing the hometown star who was supposed to restore Knicks' pride, the franchise then lavished a 30-year-old Anthony with a new 5-year, $124 million contract during the 2014 offseason. From there, things got ugly. A Knicks team en route to 65 losses lost Anthony for the season when he underwent knee surgery following the 2015 All-Star game. Melo returned looking like his usual durable self, suiting up for 72 games during the 2015-16 campaign. But the Knicks again lost 50 games and missed the playoffs. He made his 10th All-Star appearance in 2017, during a season that saw him become just the 3rd player to score 10,000 points for 2 different franchises. But surprise, surprise, the Knicks went 31-51 and missed the playoffs. Between Anthony's salary, the Knicks' futility, and a public fallout with then Knicks president Phil Jackson, the writing was on the wall. Just as he had done 7 years earlier in Denver, Anthony asked out of New York. The Knicks, who had also parted ways with Jackson by this point, sent Melo to Oklahoma City for Enes Kanter, Doug McDermott, and a second-round pick that eventually became Mitchell Robinson. In 6.5 seasons with his boyhood team, Anthony put up some noteworthy numbers and led the Knicks to heights the franchise hadn't reached in a generation. But New York won 1 measly playoff series and posted an overall losing record while paying Melo approximately $140 million during that time. His OKC tenure got off to an auspicious start when he laughed at the notion of coming off the bench despite the fact the role may have suited him at that stage of his career.
Starting at the 4, or the concept of starting at the 4, or even coming off the bench. And the second question is...
Who, me?
Oh. I guess that answers that part.
I mean, I don't know where that started, where that came from. Hey, P, they said I got to come off the bench.
On a Thunder team led by Russell Westbrook and Paul George, Melo averaged less than 20 points per game for the first time in his career, and struggled through his most inefficient season for a disappointing squad that finished 4th in the West before losing to 5th-seeded Utah in the first round. The Thunder traded him to Atlanta that summer to get the remaining year of his contract off the books. The Hawks then worked out a buyout with him, and Anthony signed with the James Harden and Chris Paul-led Rockets for 2018-19. The partnership, which saw Melo reunite with D'Antoni, turned out to be a disaster. Anthony averaged 13.4 points on 41-33-68 shooting in a mostly reserve role for Houston that lasted all of 10 games before the disappointing Rockets decided to part ways with the future Hall of Famer. Anthony was eventually traded to Chicago and subsequently waived, toiling away without an NBA job for roughly a year before Portland gave him a chance a month into the 2019-20 season, albeit on a non-guaranteed contract. Playing almost exclusively as a small ball power forward off the bench, Anthony found new life with the Blazers, taking home a Western Conference Player of the Week award at one point, and even adding another game winner to his impressive tally.
Jay Holding sweeps it low to the floor, outside of Carmelo, head down, 15-footer away, got it! Carmelo Anthony drills it straight away from 16 feet out. 3 3/10 remaining in this baby, and the Blazers take a lead at 2.
The Blazers lost a 6-game first-round series to Denver, but Melo had proven his newfound worth. 20 years after their epic high school battle, Anthony joined forces with LeBron on a star-studded but poorly constructed Lakers team that also featured Anthony Davis and Westbrook for the 2021-22 campaign. The result was a 49-loss season and 11th place finish, but between the highest three-point attempt rate of his career and a solid conversion rate from behind the arc, the veteran reserve actually posted the highest effective field goal percentage of his career during that Lakers stint. Still, it was obviously a far cry from his high-usage prime, and an aging version of Anthony was never going to silence the question that plagued his career: can you win with Carmelo Anthony? As of 2022, he was 9th on the all-time scoring list, but of the 49 players who scored at least 20,000 points, he ranked 36th in true shooting percentage. He can't be blamed for everything that held his teams back in New York and Denver, but his ball stopping, pedestrian efficiency, and lackluster defense certainly contributed to the fact his teams only twice advanced past the first round of the playoffs. He played on 4 US Olympic teams, won 3 gold medals, and sits second behind Kevin Durant on Team USA's all-time Olympic scoring list, but also left critics wondering why he didn't embrace Olympic Melo, small ball big man, spot-up scorer, in the association. These dichotomies came to define a Hall of Fame career, making Anthony himself and his place among all-time greats one of the most polarizing basketball topics of his generation. As The Ringer's Jason Concepcion so flagrantly wrote in 2017, Olympic Melo is a champion, Hoodie Melo is a trendsetter. Now Carmelo is just the guy who's fucking up the Thunder. Where Anthony's place was never questioned was among his peers. Even as fans and critics alike have been quick to discredit and discard him at various points in his career, Anthony remained revered among those who actually grace NBA courts. While pundits obsessed over his pedestrian efficiency and gluttonous usage, players understood and respected the abilities, both physical and mental, required to be a number 1 scorer, to shoulder such an offensive burden, to get your shot off whenever you want over whomever you want, and to produce consistently enough to pile up 28,000 NBA points. While we lamented New York's failures with Anthony, his peers admired the way he continued to go about his business and rarely shied away from answering the bell after tough losses and tougher seasons. While doubters continued to reference his early career transgressions, those in the NBA Brotherhood took notice of a maturing Melo's philanthropic efforts and social activism. In recent years, you could find him calling for peace in his hometown of Baltimore while marching in the Freddie Gray protests, or becoming a driving force in the crowdfunding efforts to assist Puerto Rico after the island was ravaged by Hurricane Maria. Anthony, whose father was of Puerto Rican descent, has been doing community work on the island for over a decade. His status in celebrity circles should also keep him relevant long after he's left basketball behind. This is a man whose wedding to Lala Vasquez was the subject of an entire reality TV series. When it comes to basketball, how contemporary pundits remember Melo is likely irrelevant to the scoring legend. Even without much team success, Anthony has the raw numbers and accolades to be viewed as a legend for generations to come. More than 28,000 career points and nearly 8,000 rebounds. More than $266 million in career earnings. A 10-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA selection, and a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. One of your favorite Hoopers' favorite Hoopers.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button.